Testing, testing. Testing. Testing, testing, testing.
We brought him in out of
Where's Julie? And I think they're still working.
Testing.
These are pretty. They look like ice cream cones.
They are very pretty.
Yeah. Never seen like that.
We brought them all in.
Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. This is really a time to just come together as a Norwood group and ask any questions that you have. There's been a lot of information already. If you've seen the articles in the paper and all the things that's transpired since Wednesday a week ago. So we've had 1 week, and when we got the information, it was the Wednesday, the prior week, that Norwood was not going to be allowed to house students for the next year. So we have to make quick decisions, and we met initially with the Norwood staff. We wanted to get them in and talk with them, and then that's when the calls started to all the families, because it's just such an uncertain time for the community in the Norwood area or Stonewood area. So then, after working to make phone calls to the families to try to get our students placed and working to get the staff placed, which I believe we've succeeded to do that. There's a few loose ends. Then we just felt that we owed it to the families at Norwood to ask any questions or to talk about the situation. I believe that most of you, and I think the line was stopped at some point, that you received a letter when you came in. Okay, well, they kind of ran out of time, so I think we wanted to bring you in and have you seated so that you would know your school placement. We were able to get the student placed in classrooms, your children placed in classrooms, because that's a big deal. I think probably when they left for the school year, they knew what classrooms they were going to be in. So I think that's been accomplished, and most of our staff have been placed, and we have, I believe, about 75 kids that are going toward the Simpson area, and the rest were zoned to come back to the Nutter Fort area. If you've been involved with Norwood for any amount of time over the years, and I see a lot of faces that's been associated with the school for a long time, you know that the community really kind of splits. The kids go both to the WI feeder area, and they also go to the Bridgeport feeder area. So trying to keep that consistent with where the kids will go for their middle school high school days and who their groups of friends generally are. If you were out in the Bridgeport area that normally, or Quiet Dell area that normally fed to Bridgeport, we tried to honor that by keeping you in the Bridgeport feeder area, your children. And then, so that's why the decisions were made based on addresses and where you live. And when the kids get to 5th grade at Norwood, if you've had children go through there, they split. And those are all based on addresses and where they're going to go for middle high school years. So that's how that was done. We've tried to involve everybody along the way to get this done as smoothly as possible. It doesn't fix that Norwood School is not going to be there next year. But we're just trying to make the transition for the students, first of all, the most important transition, so you guys know what to expect and what teachers are going to have and where they're going to go. That was our first priority. Of course, then our staff that's been there, there's a seasoned staff. There's a wonderful staff at Norwood, and we needed to make sure that they had places for them for next school year. So that's where we're at. That's what brought us here. That's what we've been working on for the last really week and a half. Mr. Lopez has been working with his transportation department to make sure there's busing, and that's all taken care of, so that's smooth, and you'll have an idea where your children are going to get on the bus to ride to whether they're going towards Simpson or Nutter Fort. So did you want to?
And we have a couple gentlemen from transportation here that can give you a little bit of information about the school bus. We know what school bus that your children are going to be riding, but we still have to get the times down, some of the logistics. So what we'll do is we can give you an idea of what bus number that you're going to ride. You can ask any particular questions that you might have, and then we will send those schedules out to the schools so that, and we'll probably be able to put those online so you'll be able to see exactly what the pickup and drop-off times are for your children.
Right now, they're working on the bus numbers. There were some buses that, if you're familiar with Norwood, there's transfer buses that happen right there in the school, and those transfer buses are there because the school splits and goes to Bridgeport, and they go back to WI. So that's really why those transfer buses were there initially. So the structure and the foundation really was there. It's just they had to tweak and... We really have eliminated almost all of those transfer buses but two, so that those kids that are going to Simpson can go straight in. Yeah.
And not go through transfer. We really don't like to do that, especially with not a school being there. And there is going to be two buses that will transfer, 234 and 280, but they'll do at Nutter Fort. So... Interstate or back roads? Well, I think mainly the interstate, but let us work on the logistics because they're picking up kids on the way in also.
Yeah, used to be John Hollinsworth's bus, right? Is he still going to be taking, or is that changing?
Yeah, John is, but
yeah.
we have 3 buses that are just going to go straight from that area past Quiet Dell straight into Simpson, so that we don't have to transfer. And then we also have those kids at Cost Avenue and all that. We already have those buses aligned to be picked up, for the children to be picked up and taken to Nutter Fort.
Sure.
So we have it almost all worked out, but we don't want to say times because it may change a little bit based on some of the pickup times.
We had some questions online, and we'll go ahead and address those. I haven't even seen those yet. He's been collecting. This is David Oliverio. He's our communications person, so we're live streaming, so anybody that could not make it
I will say that when you have a question, please raise your hand and I will come to you with a microphone. The reason is because we are live streaming this, so the feed from the audio is going to go directly into live stream. So for our people at home, we want to talk into the microphone. So I will get to you. Just give me a second. Just raise your hand and I'll get to you. But our first question, can you please tell us which teachers and faculty will be going to Simpson and which will be going to Nutter Fort?
Do you know all of them off the top of your head? We actually had a posting that was actually coming down. So we had several that had the opportunity to go ahead and bid on current positions that were available at Nutter Fort. And that just went out on an addendum. The board meeting is tomorrow, so they will make those. I'm sure the board will approve that. But so there's actually folks that will be hired into permanent positions at Nutter Fort that were Norwood teachers. So I think you've worked to place them, and we can say the ones that's on the posting. It went out on an addendum.
Okay.
It's out there. The board just has to vote on it tomorrow night if you want to go. Start with maybe kindergarten.
Yeah, well, preschool.
Preschool.
Both teachers and aides from Norwood will go to Nutter Fort. Okay, so preschool at Norwood is just being moved to Nutter Fort. Kindergarten, Mrs. Smith's going to
She's going to find out tonight.
Yes. If you have a thing that says kindergarten to be announced at Nutter Fort, it is Mrs. Smith from Norwood. The other teacher, we're not sure where she's going yet. There's a loose end. When we get to first grade, one teacher isn't going to be working anymore. One teacher is going to Nutter Fort. Second grade. Going to where?
They want the names of all the teachers' names.
Okay, so I've done everyone except the lady who...
Yeah, Chris Lucas.
Pre-K, Mrs. Fishball, sorry, I got you, and Miss Johnson. Okay, so then for kindergarten, Mrs. Smith, and we're not sure where Mrs. Heron will be. Gotcha, I know, I see what you're saying. First grade, Mrs. Lucas will go to Nutter Fort. Is the resignation on the board thing?
For the other first grade teacher. Yes.
Tonight.
I believe.
Mrs. Dingus is going to another state. Okay, so second grade at Nutter Fort, Mrs. Nicholas has bid and we'll get that job there. So if you have Nutter Fort second grade to be announced, that will be Lou Ann Nicholas. Kaylin Edwards will be at Nutter Fort. Well, at Nutter Fort also, I believe. Third grade.
Elliott.
Mrs. Elliott and Mrs. Murphy. One will go to Norwood. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I've said Norwood so many times. I apologize. One will go to Nutter Fort. One will go to Simpson. We don't know that answer yet.
We're letting them work on that.
Right, and you don't know because we don't know.
Just take one question at a time.
Yeah, hold on.
David, one question at a time.
It's not, it is, I can't go into some personnel things for those two ladies.
We're allowing those teachers we talked with them, and we're allowing them to let us know where they want to go, because we need one at Nutter Fort and we need one at Simpson. Those are just details yet that they need to let us know.
Yeah.
Because I've felt that the staff, we could just place them, one and one at the other.
We're trying to work with the teachers
We're trying
so
to
that they're
let the
happy
teachers
too.
have some voice in where they're getting placed, since their jobs have been. What's that? Oh, I understand that. And you will have a teacher assigned, guaranteed. Yeah. You will get a teacher assigned
I can't hear you.
soon. She said about her babies. Right.
Gotcha.
It actually brings me into my next question.
We absolutely want the same
Gotcha.
for
And
the
are
students.
are you speaking in special needs also?
Yes.
If you want to stay, I can talk with you a little bit about that. Okay, yeah. And when we come to the special needs teachers,
What's that? Yes.
Mrs. Collins, who was a new special ed teacher there, who has been in our county, excellent, is going to Nutter Fort. Mrs. Shriver is also being placed at Nutter Fort because that's where the need is. Does that help you at all? Yes. And let's, good.
All right.
I'd like to. Thank you.
Guys, hold on one second. We've got another question I think can tie into some of the questions that they're asking.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, let her finish going up through the
apologize.
teachers.
I-
Okay. when we, and here's where we have some new people that I'm not going to know. 4th grade. Help me. Mrs. Woods was 4th grade going to Nutter Fort.
She would have been new there this year.
And there's another new lady. Harrison will also be going to Nutter Fort. 5th grade.
They were new.
Look at me. I've lost my people. Giovanna. Thank you. Mrs. Jones will be going to Nutter Fort, and Mrs. Vincent will also be going to Nutter Fort. We had two.
Yeah.
And we're not sure about Mrs. Heron. And what has happened is Simpson could absorb.
Simpson had room.
Them.
Now they're full, but they had some room to absorb children.
The Norwood side.
Yeah, on the Bridgeport side.
Wait. Hold on. We got hands up everywhere. David, if you want to take.
She's up first.
Yeah.
You got to be able to hear him.
Go ahead and speak.
Oh, I'm not. My children are Norwood alum. My grandchildren attend Norwood currently. My concern and my question is Norwood is a smaller community school. I would like to know what is going to happen for, first, the walkers, because we have many families in Norwood that walk to school. Secondly, my question is pretty much like this young lady said, what is going to happen to those kids who do not do well in these huge classrooms with 25, 30 kids? My granddaughter in particular has a 504 plan. Here it is less than 30 days before school is starting, and this has kind of been thrown in our laps, maybe thrown in your laps as well. But I mean, I have many questions. I have many questions actually, but that would be my main question. What is going to happen to these children that need a little bit more attention, need a little bit more care, need a little bit more patience, need a little bit more time in a bigger setting such as Nutter Fort compared to attending Norwood Elementary?
Those are all great questions. They are. Nutter Fort, well, first of all, a classroom will not have more students than is allowed by law. And I know Norwood, most of the time the classrooms were full. You can have up to 20 in pre-K. You can have 23 in kindergarten. You can have 25 in first grade. You can have 25 in second grade, 28 in, or 25 in third grade. The class sizes at Nutter Fort and Simpson are those same sizes. The difference is the building is just larger. They're going into a larger building, but in that classroom setting is the same as far as the number of teachers. And in fact, by teachers that are leaving Norwood and being placed at Nutter Fort and Simpson, there's more resources there. We are sending more people over. Some classrooms, maybe 2 teachers will be in there. Someone asked about a counselor. The counselor at Norwood had already left over the summer. So there is not, that counselor that was at Norwood had already left the system. She had resigned earlier in the summer. So Nutter Ford has multiple counselors. The programming at Nutter Ford has changed. There's a lot of resources there. We've placed a lot of resources there in the last few years. Same way with Simpson. They have the same services and the same resources. And the teachers, when we met and we took the time to meet with the teachers at Nutter Ford and at Simpson, they were just excited. They really want the kids there. There was not even a minute that you would think that they did not want the children there in their buildings. And we know this is going to be a hard transition, but Norwood is not available to put the children in, and in a matter of a week and a half, we've had to place 270 children in other places, and we've tried to take every possible care. We've listened to the Norwood staff. They've told us, talked to us, and that's why a lot of them worked with Miss Mancini to hand call parents to try to ease your minds, but we're not going to be able to fix the hurt and the idea that we're losing a community school. The school is not safe to put children in, and we had to have a plan to move them. And we didn't know in May. Yes, Mr. Lopez can speak to that. He's the facilities guy. We didn't know in May. What
ended up happening, and I'm going to give you the exact what had happened. There was a concern with bats at Norwood. There was a concern with air quality, and I had fielded those complaints, and so I contacted the state facilities department, and so that they could come down and check the air particulates, check for radon. We made sure that everything was sealed up for the bats getting in the building. That wasn't even on our radar, the structure. If you've been in Norwood, you know the floors sag. So, okay, so
okay, but WI
what
is 10 times worse than Norwood.
Listen,
okay, look. Well, I got you.
Not only that, you have a perfectly good school in Bridgeport. You have 2 elementary schools in Bridgeport. You could have took Norwood with the children and the teachers and put all them babies at Simpson. What is the reason why you guys didn't completely make that school Norwood and keep our children with the same children that were there with the same teachers that care about our children? Because no matter what school you take our children to, no school at all is the same staff as Norwood Elementary. They give their blood, sweat, and tears to these babies. When you walk in there, my babies walk in there, they're like, hey, hi, Oretha. Kids that they know your kids. None of them, they're going to be like, come on, let's go. Simpson too. You're going to put these babies with staff that don't care. And I'm not saying that there's not good teachers, they are. But why didn't you take Norwood, their staff, and their children and take them over to a school? Bridgeport has good schools. Bridgeport has Johnson that was built last year? They have enough room. Take these children, put them in a school. We know Norwood was bad. Most of us bought our house because of Norwood.
Right.
So let me just go a little bit further, and then I'll be quiet. I just wanted you to know how the process happened with Norwood being found structurally not okay. So what had happened was when the people from the facilities department came in, that we already knew that it had some problems with the way that the floor was. It was not deemed unsafe, though. In 2013, it was evaluated and it was structurally sound, is what they had said. So move forward to April. When they came in to take a look at the air quality, they said, we really want you to get another look at the floor to make sure it's safe. So we said, when do you want us to do that? Well, let's do it when school's out, which is what we did. So they come in and they take a look at it, and you know it has that sag in it, and we cut holes in it so that the structural engineer could see. At first, they thought the pockets of the floor joist was slipping away from the walls with that sag. We cut all that open. That wasn't the problem. The problem is it has 2x12 lumber, and I'm telling you more than you probably want to hear, but I want to be honest with you, that spans in some places over 25 feet. And that's the reason why the floor has sagged. That is not structurally sound. So when a structural engineer went back, initially we had hoped that it could stay open. When he came back, he plugged his numbers in, and he said, your classrooms are only stable for about 23 to 28 pounds per square foot. And they have to be 40. He said, well, maybe you could put an occupancy in there. You can't tell a limited amount of kids can go into each classroom. None of you would want that. So that is, once they put that in writing and they told us that, we didn't have a choice. And that was not, believe me, that was not what we wanted.
No. We had an engineering report done in 2013.
In 2013, we had
and it
CDC came in.
I understand. I would not have been in a position in 2013 to make those decisions to move those kids. I am now. This is my third year. Right.
Yeah, we can. I have two gentlemen after this meeting you can go out and talk to. They'll give you your bus number. Don't have the exact times, but we have the bus numbers figured out. Yeah, they'll ride the bus. It's either going to be 44T or 234.
Right.
I understand.
That was one of the first discussions that the staff at Norwood brought up, and we understand that. That there, what? Right. Right. We had a request to do a special open house for Norwood families, and we've scheduled those. We just got those scheduled. It's going to be on the 10th from 1 to 3, one at Simpson, one at Nutter Fort. And then if you cannot get there for those, we have an evening one scheduled in both of those buildings. And those were announced. That's on, I believe they're on our website, David, all the open houses. Yeah, we're just now actually publishing those for all of our buildings. The one open house is right before school starts. That'll be on probably the 15th, 16th. We're doing all of those. What? Yeah.
We have another question, Mr. Oliveira.
Okay, so I love Norwood dearly, and I hear the concerns, that there's going to be students transitioning. However, I do disagree. I do not think there is room at Simpson or Nutter Fort, so I am curious to hear they're absorbing, personally for going to Simpson, you're now absorbing 75 new students. Bridgeport's been at capacity for quite some time, so where are these kiddos going exactly? I mean, I know you said they had a little bit of room, but I find it really tough to believe when I have made calls for hardships to try to get my child at Simpson, and they say we don't have any room. So I have some real concerns about what the classroom space, because of the square footage per student, that's going to be in both of those places. How's that been addressed for both Simpson and Nutter Fort?
We actually went and looked at their enrollment numbers in each of their classes, and we came up with the number of possible slots, and those slots were filled with Norwood children. Like I said, the classrooms, some will be at capacity, but they will not be above what state code was. Every year I was at Norwood, we were at capacity in all of our classrooms. We had 28 in my 4th and 5th grades when I was there. So, I mean, you have limits in every classroom. We looked at those open spots. We looked at the number of children. We had to determine first which ones were zoned for Simpson, which ones were to go to Nutter Fort, and we looked at all of our positions that were available, and your children got those spots.
So for long term, are we going to be redistricting the county within the next couple of years? Because I mean, you know, the population of Bridgeport only continues to grow, you know.
They do.
So I'm curious, you know, as a person who's in Quietdale, where I very likely could get district to go to South Harrison, I'm uninterested in space capacity is fine now, but in 2 years from now, we're all in here having this same conversation, and now you're shipping my child, you know, to South Harrison or Lost Creek in her formative years. So are we looking at the long-term picture? I know you guys have a lot on your plate, so that's not meant to be like saying that it's a negative, but do we look at these long-term things? Because if in 2 years you're going to come back to me and say, okay, everybody that lives on the Quietdale side of 79 south of Bridgeport, will you now go to, you know, Lost Creek and West Milford? Well, that's not okay either. I don't want to transition her there, start my other child, and then have to move them yet again. Is this something that has come up?
I have had no discussion about redistricting. In fact, when we were looking at the students, it was important, just because I know your area, and I know that community really in Quietdale Circle Drive, families have built there and lived there now over 30 years. That area has been district for Bridgeport for over 30 years, and I am not changing that. There's no talk. I mean, he's facilities that we'll redistrict. That's why those children are going to the Bridgeport area. Your families have lived there, and sports, all the activities I know are in that Bridgeport feeder area. So that's why that decision was made. Simpson is literally about 8 minutes. And when I was there, Simpson, when I had overflow students, because our classrooms were always full, and when I had the 29th fourth grader, my overflow went to Simpson. That's the way it's always worked, and I knew that, and I understand that you're embedded in the Bridgeport community. That is not something on my radar. You know, I'm only for a passing person in there. Somebody else, I can't speak for future boards or myself. And you've got to understand, I've got 5 board members that make a lot of decisions based on policy and decisions over the years. You can go back and look at building facilities and all of that and decisions that were made. You have 5 different board members, and that changes often. So the decisions they make about facilities, and
So I actually have 2 things I'd like to ask, and it bounces off of yours. So just one observation. You said that you're going to have 2 teachers in some of the larger classrooms. Is this correct?
They're not larger classrooms. You'll have a regular
size. The classes
size.
that are getting our extra students that are coming from Norwood to Simpson and to Nutter Fort, they are going to have 2 teachers per classroom?
Some may,
Okay,
because
so
we are obligated to provide the teachers and the staff at Norwood a position.
Correct. Can I
I
ask
do
my
not have
question?
empty classrooms just to move them into. So we've allowed them to kind of work as a faculty. Some are willing to co-teach and pair up if we need to have that happen. So there will be some situations where that may occur.
Correct. So my concern about that, and I think everyone in this room can agree with this, when you're in your home and you and your spouse may not agree on something, your children, they eat off of that vibe, and they kind of pull off of it too. So if you have two teachers in a classroom who don't agree with something, they're human, and they're going to naturally, you can see the frustration on them. And if the children can see the frustration on two teachers, they're also not going to be in a comfortable learning environment.
I think that our professional staff working together, we have a lot of situations in the county, really all over, where there are co-teachers.
Correct, and in my
Yeah.
experience, we've already dealt with two teachers not working well together.
Well,
Well is the answer we
right.
get?
No, I would hope that that would not be the case. And that's why we've asked our staff to kind of talk with each other, and folks that work well together, we've allowed them time to think
I
about.
work well with my husband, but we still
Yeah.
have disagreements.
Yeah. We're also putting, new legislation is there's aides in all the first grade classrooms. And you can speak with any teacher here. You don't always have that. It takes time to build relationships with people. You have kindergarten with an aide. You've got two adults from the time the kids are in pre-K, kindergarten, and now first grade. There's going to be pairs of adults all the way through. And I would hope that they would always work together and get along. And that's...
Okay, so I have another concern, and this is a different topic, and it's going to feed off of her. I'm not from here. I'm actually from out of state, and I moved here, and I was told to go to Norwood because of the community of the teachers and the family that you produce there. So I put my daughters into that school. I have one daughter who has an IEP. She literally can only have conversations with certain people because of the pressure that she feels sometimes. Fortunately, we were welcome to get Miss Shriver, once again, thank you, and Miss Britcher, who took care of her. But now that fifth grade student, she's going to WI. So here I am under the Norwood roof, and the school is being closed. So my IEP child who's going to WI, this school is just as bad as Nutter Fort, from my understanding. Yes, as Norwood is my understanding. So here's my daughter who already struggles to learn in these environments, a normal setting. What's going to happen when somebody complains about the school, about the air quality or the building structure, and they now have to relocate my daughter to make a new relationship with a new IEP teacher?
Should we talk about
We don't have any structural issues at WI that is
I am a
anywhere
contractor,
similar.
and I've seen WI.
When I talk about, I'm talking
I
about.
remodel homes, and
Let-
I've
let me
seen
just-
WI.
I'm trying to be totally transparent. I have nothing to hide here. I promise you. As far as WI is, they're on the list in your plan. The whole state does that. So you had Norwood, you had WI, and you had Northview.
So why don't we plan ahead, because we already know
Wait.
WI is old, and it's going to do the same thing as Norwood. Can we go ahead and start that now?
And we are. That was one of the superintendent's goals, and we are. But, again, we can't blame everything that's happened in the past. I get it.
I'm
But
not planning on
we need to
blaming.
move
I just want to
forward with
plan
the-
for
We
the
are
future of
moving
my daughter.
forward,
But
and there is a plan to address our old structures, because I said we don't want this happening in the future, that we're in an emergency situation. This is not good for anybody involved, students, staff, families, for sure. We do not want, and we've honestly we had one emergency board meeting. I have not had a board meeting since this all transpired, except for the emergency board meeting to provide them the report. We have our first board meeting tomorrow with the updates and all of that. The structural report? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
public. It's a public.
No. No.
No, we just had one. I mean, we had the one done as soon as we could possibly get it done. Had no anticipation that this was going to be like this. We were doing it to prove that it was safe. Was going to do it to prove that it was safe. You know, floors have, if you looked at anything that's an old structure and they were built with green lumber, old lumber that was wet, it would move and it would shift. That did make it unsafe. And we did not anticipate because it had been deemed safe. And then when he came in and he did it. So I have no problem with, you know, however we want to do that.
The minute we found out, we took action. The minute we found out, we started that very next day working to notify families and to get things started. If this could have been earlier, it would have been better for everybody in this room. Yes?
We had to cut into the floors. We had to take ceiling out, and we did not want to do that and disturb, you know, a lot of stuff with staff and kids being in there. So they said, do it as soon as school's out, which is what we did.
With nobody really anticipating that they would close the building. Yeah. Right. Simpson, if you're talking about moving Norwood staff to Simpson, there's not an extra classroom there. Johnson, Johnson, I'm not going to say is at capacity, but it's close to being at capacity. So you have Johnson at capacity, you have Simpson almost. There is no way that Simpson could have been put into Johnson. No possible way. There's not enough classrooms, not enough space.
Another question here. Let's let her.
And I have, I don't know if this is a question or a comment.
Sure.
One of the things that Mr. Lopez, and I know that you've not been in your position for a long period of time, so I know 10 years ago you weren't there. But it's been 10 years since the last structural examination of this school has been done. 10 years. 10 years whenever you knew the Board of Education. I understand that maybe some of you were not in your roles, but the board knew, and I want to know why the board members aren't here. Because you know what? 10 years is a long time not to re-examine a school that you believed at that point could have had a structural. A lot can change in 10 years. A lot can change in a year. And you indicated, if I understood you correctly, there was a 25-foot span. And that was what rendered it structurally unsound. I would submit to you that 25-foot span was there 10 years ago.
Well, I'd
so
say you're right.
It was structurally unsound 10 years ago.
This is the description, and you'll see that over the years there's been work done to Norwood, like plywood put on the floors, and we wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known that unless you're an engineer.
And I'm not accusing either of you of that.
No, I get that, but he said that a lot of the weight, like where they went in and made repairs and they put plywood in, fixing the building had added weight to the classroom floors. And over the years, it's like a stress. It takes a while.
Sure.
It wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that. I think a 25-foot span, I mean, is the submission here that it's not up to code?
It's-
Yeah, 14 to 16 feet should be.
It was, at that juncture, 25 feet was not acceptable.
Well, I
under the
don't
building
know
code.
that-
I don't know that the other engineer back then picked up on that.
Well,
We
and
had
I
a
think
ver-
that that's an issue that probably needs to be looked at.
Yeah. They
that
actually
engineer.
cut into the floors so they could see the joists in their
And ran
entirety.
cameras.
I mean,
Yeah.
there should be some accountability for this because based upon what I'm hearing today, is that 10 years ago you had a structurally unsound school that was examined by an engineer who didn't catch the issue, and you all had concerns then. Otherwise, why was the engineer there? Because things were sagging, things were leaning. Somebody said the steps were leaning.
I think
so.
things have been sagging and leaning in that school for probably 50 years or
Well,
longer. But I mean,
Yes.
and that
It was a 1920 school,
that
if
was
I'm
right.
correct.
And that was probably
1924.
one of the
main
reasons why they
priority.
didn't, when it was found to be structurally okay, they didn't have major concerns because they thought it was more because of the
she had her
way
hand
that
up now.
the lumber had dried and had twisted and sagged, which is that's not uncommon. And the structural engineer did say that. But when he discovered the length of the spans of the floor joist, I don't know that the other fella, did that. And that company, from my understanding, is no longer in business. The one that did 2013.
2013. Simpson had a tower. There's been a new section, and I can't tell you the year. Not that long ago, a new section was built on. But they tore down the older part of Simpson, and there was probably a third of that building redone completely. What's that? Yeah, that school has been.
Okay, my turn.
We have an architect and engineer that is there, and we actually are doing work to the facility right now. So and it's getting a lot of upgrades. So yes.
I'm not going to be ready. Okay, yeah, I'm going to pivot here.
Every right.
We have a question over here.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so I'm going to pivot on this, and I want to have a question about Simpson aftercare. So we were really fortunate to have the YMCA come into Norwood for aftercare. They also do Nutter Fort. I know they go where need is, and that's not necessarily your responsibility, but I was wondering if you had any conversations about any aftercare possibilities. I've heard of a couple, not affiliated to the school, but is there anything in the works? I'm just looking for a little direction as we get into the new school system, because the Y at Norwood was amazing, and so I would really love any direction that you may be able to give me when it comes to Simpson and aftercare, preferably till 6 o'clock.
Yeah. They actually, the YMCA has a program at Nutter Fort. It's the same program, and they will expand if a school feels that the need is there. With the bridge being in Bridgeport, I don't know that the Y will venture to Simpson because they kind of have their
own. The bridge doesn't come
own.
to the school. The bridge goes, you have to bus to the bridge. They're
Right.
only up until 5. It's
The
not
Y
ideal.
has that, and they generally stay in the Clarksburg area.
Yes, here's
But
some
I don't know.
comments.
Simpson has an evening after school. They don't come into the building though. It is off-site, isn't it, at Cubby's?
Yeah, there's a bus
So
that goes to Cubby's.
we can actually we can look at that to see what's available.
Okay.
Money.
Thank you.
That's a, right. We can definitely reach out to the Y. They generally kind of tell us the sites that they are interested in going to, so yes. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, that's good to know. Those are things that we need to know, that affect you personally.
And
the
Mr.
families,
Rubenstein is the new principal there. So, you know, I mean, if there was a no before, there might not be a no now.
Yeah,
We just have to speak with him.
we need to remember to, that's why, yeah. Yes,
This isn't a comment, it's just a statement. Every teacher in Norwood School loved every one of our kids. It was a family. It wasn't just your kids went to a school. Every parent in here I've interacted with in one way or the other. We're losing that. And if we're upset and we're that scared of what's going to happen, most of our kids are too. My little nephew has been devastated since this all has came out, and I've tried to keep it as calm as I could, but inside I'm broken because I'm losing every single one of these people to one degree or the other. Like right now, my little boy is in a class he doesn't have any friends in. So I just think that everyone has a valid output here. Some of us are really upset because our kids are being uprooted like a tree, like a tornado has went through. I mean, Miss Comer was our every morning and every evening. She was there with a smile on. I seen her one day, she had the flu and she still had a smile on. As every other teacher in here, our secretary, it's uprooted us all. And we are devastated as our little community.
I
have another
can't
question.
follow that. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. I have several older children that all went through the Bridgeport system, and so I also have a 9-year-old that went through Norwood, and so that was my first experience with Norwood, and I came to realize that there's a lot of opportunities that came with Norwood that my older kids didn't get with Simpson, such as free lunch. And I'm one of those middle income. I don't qualify for free lunch normally, and I didn't even know it existed. But every other school in the county gets free lunch other than the Bridgeport schools, which blew my mind. Yeah. What about that? You know, I'm one of those parents. I don't qualify for that. I did through Norwood, and there was a lot of other programs. Like Mr. Setai had STEM after school till 4:30 for the kids. I can't afford after school care. He did it for free. You know, and choir, all that stuff that Norwood had to offer, I can't afford that as a single parent, you know, that Norwood had to offer. And my other kids that went to Simpson, they didn't do that stuff.
The funding is available for them to have the same services. And the free lunch, that's a great question. 2 years ago, Harrison County has added all the schools to the free lunch list. So it doesn't.
Bridgeport schools are now
Bridgeport
included?
schools are free lunch schools. So that was taken care of it was the previous board to this one decided that was a great need, because you're right. You're looking at the whole county and you've got 2 schools or 3 schools that have to pay for lunches.
Yeah.
And
And
they
my
felt,
boys, believe me, $150, $200 a month for lunch was.
and that was placed in the budget 2 years ago. It was my first year, I believe, on the job, and that was a big concern, so that was addressed. As far as choir and the extended day programs, they have the same funding available at Simpson to do that. So we just need to make sure that they're doing those activities, and you'll have new leadership there.
Where is Mr. Setai? Do you know?
Mr. Setai is going to be at Nutter Fort. So.
I am uniquely in this position to where my own child has been affected because I wanted her to go to Norwood, and that's where we lived, and loved Norwood, loved the teachers there. But I also work at Nutter Fort, and I feel like we're kind of getting a bad rap here. The teachers at Nutter Fort, the teachers at Simpson, give us a chance to love your kids, because I promise you, we will all know their names. I promise you, we will love on your babies the same way that they were loved at Norwood. We are taking in these teachers, and we are ready to love them too. We are going to learn from them, and everything that was good at Norwood, we hope to bring to our schools too. Everyone is nervous in this position, whether it be county office, Nutter Fort, Simpson, the Norwood teachers. Yeah, but I'm going to get the opportunity to, which is super exciting for us. So let us have that opportunity. And for the people who are there with the IEPs and the 504s, your teachers were legally bound to follow those things, and so are we. The classroom sizes are the same no matter where you're at. We are going to take care of your children the best we can. And if you guys have an idea, talk to your teachers, because as a teacher, I know that we want to listen to you, and we understand that you guys are hurting. We're all hurting in this situation. And the only thing we can do instead of argue and fight as adults is try to come together for these kids, because they're way more devastated than we'll ever be. Having concerns, yeah. I get that.
It's emotional.
Mr. Oliveira, is there any more questions at this time?
Just to go back to talk about Nutter Fort. When Nutter Fort was put together years ago, it brought in, I don't know how many different communities, and it was a large number of kids brought onto one campus, and at one time it was the largest school in the state. It had that reputation. Now it is not. The sides have, because of enrollment, and it's happening countywide, except for, I'll be honest with you, the enrollment that's growing is in the Bridgeport area, because that's where families are moving. That's the reality. And so the enrollment there tends to be growing. In other areas, it's either staying stagnant or it's decreasing by a lot of numbers. And so Nutter Fort really, I think over the years, because it was that's how it was brought in and put into existence 20 years ago, all these schools coming together into that. It is not that size. The size of Nutter Fort Primary, Nutter Fort Intermediate is about the size that Simpson will be. It's about the size that West Milford is. It's about the size, it's a pretty typical middle-of-the-line size elementary school. We have over 600 kids at Johnson. Big Elm has how many? Over 600 and almost 700 at Big Elm. Those are really large elementary schools. So I think that it's kind of, and I've even learned that since I've gotten into this job. You hear all these things that Nutter Fort's is huge, but when you walk into Nutter Fort Primary or Nutter Fort Intermediate, whichever side you're on, there is a typical size elementary school, and we have the teachers there. I've worked in multiple elementary schools. I love Norwood. The staff there is very close-knit. When I was at Norwood, we had about 368 kids. Now we're at set 274 in that area. But the classroom teachers, we have wonderful teachers all over this county. And they all work hard to make children feel important. They feel safe and secure, and we know that. There's nobody that wants anything other than that for your kids. And this is... We have our classrooms full in all of those, I mean, with teachers. We have certified teachers in all of those classrooms. And those were the options to put the children. Nutterfort was 5 minutes this direction in the WI feeder area, and Simpson was the direction to keep those Bridgeport kids together, because I knew that was important in the Quiet Dell area. I'm talking about with these kids, with the Norwood kids. Those are the numbers with the Norwood kids. When we sat down and looked at all, and I get a view of the whole county, and I have been fortunate over my years to be in multiple feeder areas. And I actually started at West Milford, I'm not going to say how many years ago, and we had 580 in that building. We're just not seeing those numbers in our schools. Salem at one time, 350, 400. They're down to 172. I mean, our numbers, and I'll be up front with you, schools are funded based on student numbers. The money that comes into this county, I mean, they are. But that's the reality of it. And Norwood would be there and be open today if we had not got that report a week and a half ago. Norwood would be there. I'm not saying that down the road, because of the age of the building, that we're looking at all of our old buildings, because I do not want this to happen to another group of children. Yes.
We have one more question.
We have to make plans. Yes. But that's as honest as I can be with where we are.
Okay. When my son started school a few years ago, I honestly wanted so bad for him to go to where I went to grade school at Nutterfort. When I found out he was going to, because where we live in Quiet Dell, he was going to end up going to Norwood, my heart was a little broken. But I loved when he started there, I loved that he was going to Norwood. I fell in love with his teachers. I loved the small school, but he's going to lose that. And now he's going to Nutterfort. I'm okay with that, but he's got problems. Like a lot of these parents have said, their kids have got problems. I've been talked out of giving him an IEP and a 504 several times because he's so smart. He doesn't need a 504. We'll just keep meeting. We'll keep meeting. We'll keep meeting. He doesn't need one. I don't know what we're going to do, but he doesn't need one. I hope that he doesn't have issues. I don't know if they're going to be able to help him. I hope he doesn't get lost in the system. I'm worried for my boy. But there's one other thing. I don't want him to go to WI. When I'm growing up where I lived now, and because we live where we live, I was told he has to go to WI. I grew up where I am now, and I went to Bridgeport. I don't understand why he can't go to Bridgeport.
What's that? I didn't hear where she was.
I live on the other side of I-79. I live at the end of Suds Run Road, and I lived there then. And when RW shut down, I was in class of 91. I was sent to Bridgeport because I got a choice. I had a choice of where I live. I got to choose to go to Bridgeport. Why can't he choose to go to Bridgeport?
No, that was changed many years ago. I know it when I was at Norwood.
I don't want my son going to WI.
Yeah. That.
Hi.
Yeah.
I was just curious what actually went into the decision to close Stonewood as opposed to repairing it. Was it strictly financial? And if that was the case, why wasn't there community outreach to try to get funding to fix our school?
So I'll try to answer that. So when we talked to the structural engineer, basically every floor would have to be taken out. And it's still, the walls, you have a stick-built, where most of our masonry block. So cost-effective-wise, it would cost probably as much as building a new school. And so the cost really is not, I don't know the state would even allow us to do that, because we have to get funding to really be able to do that through the School Building Authority, and they're going to evaluate the project to see if it's a good, a good investment. And I think with the idea that it was because of the age of the facility, I don't think they would let us put that kind of money in it or fund us for that. No, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Honestly,
I'm not arguing,
yeah,
but
yeah,
we did
not know.
No. I mean, I'll do a lot of things, but I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
We have the structural report, and I did not want that to happen, because look what we're dealing with. If you think for 1 minute that we wanted this type of emotions to come out, because we know how important your small school is, we understand that. We absolutely did not want this to happen. As a matter of fact, when I got the structural report, I walked in, and I never go in and ask to speak with the superintendent. And it was like, come here, we got to talk.
I was doing interviews, I believe,
we were
or
doing
something.
interviews.
I knew it was something.
It was impactful.
Yeah.
And we understand.
And we immediately set up a Teams meeting with the engineer, and I told him, I said, I want to see it in black and white. I want to see it in writing and in black and white. And then once they told us, we had no choice but to move your children.
And yes.
Hmm?
Yes.
Right.
Right. Right. If we had known, believe me, we wouldn't wait till the last minute to do this. That would not be a plan.
Or if kids would have already started school and we'd have gotten the report. This is bad. This is not great, but at least it did give us some time to try to think of. We really did sit down and the Norwood staff was great. We felt we needed to meet with them first because they gave us more information. They talked to us about a lot of different situations and things, and I was familiar with kind of how the busing and how the school operated. That they were instrumental in having that first meeting with them, and they're saying, you need to do this, you need to think about that. We've heard some great things here tonight about, the YMCA. I think that's a great idea. That's something definitely we can do. We had a request to have additional open houses. We sat down, and there's, like you said, not a lot of days left, so we were trying to fix, and we're going to have to bring staff in for those open houses because they're technically not back to work yet, and they're willing to. Norwood staff has spent a lot of hours with us, talking with us, and they're technically supposed to be off as well, but this is critical. It's important. They know it's important. They're still caring for your kids now. Norwood's, the Nutterfort staff, the Simpson staff, they've all met with us on multiple occasions. We were trying to think of everything that, was the most important thing that we could take care of right now. And that was to get them placed and to get them a teacher.
She has the mic. Let her go, and then you can grab the mic after her.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say teachers do an amazing job no matter where they are. I couldn't do what they did.
Yeah.
But my question is I have a special needs child that has an IEP that's never rode a bus, unless it was field trips. And I don't know if she was assisted on the bus during that time or not. And can I set an IEP before school starts?
Absolutely.
Where does your child go to school?
She will be going to Nutter Fort now.
Okay, if you'll put your name down there, I will get you in touch with the special education director and have her call you by Thursday. How about that?
Okay, I just have a really quick question. We discussed the teachers and where they will be placed. Where will Mrs. Comer, our principal, be placed?
Oh. Mrs. Comer? We brought Mrs. Comer in. She was one that we brought in and had a sit down with her and had a conversation with her and looked at all of the different scenarios because she needs to be somewhere. And we looked at how many kids were going to Nutter Fort. We do have 4 administrators already on that campus. So we felt by adding extra students at Simpson that the need would be there at this time. So that is where she is slated to be working, is at Simpson for this coming school year.
So my one statement first is I talked to the director of the YMCA. As long as you contact the principal, or if you want to facilitate that conversation, they're more than happy to go out to Simpson and Simpson and have that same program they had in Norwood. So you just got to let them know, and they will do that.
That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
My other question is, obviously this becomes an unplanned consolidation. I, obviously from Clarksburg, worry about the next 5-year plan, the other consolidations that may be on the horizon. I would just like to request the board and everybody to get together and have a plan and kind of reach out to the community and be more prepared, because Northview is old, WI is obviously old, and there's always talk about consolidation and the plans, but it's really never public. And I know terms change and board members change, but I would like to be more open on future plans and how they can do that, because Stonewood is going to suffer. If Northview has to leave, that community will suffer. And being on council for Clarksburg, I really worry about Northview. Stonewood, I mean, that community is going to suffer no matter what. No matter how great you guys, it's not on you, but they're going to suffer. So just like to be more ahead of those type of things and try to figure that out. And so hopefully we can save the communities, the kids, and everybody. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I just want to know, like mine says to be announced for my daughter's teacher. When will we find out who she has?
Yes, if you had a paper that had to be announced, we were waiting for this posting to see where some of the Norwood teachers, some of them bid and took positions, so we didn't want to prematurely put names out until they were awarded the positions. And that board meeting is actually tomorrow, when they'll be officially hired into their new roles. We
So
tried
if
to
you
do
have-
as much up front as possible. There's, you know.
If you have kindergarten at Nutter Fort, it will be Jackie Smith. If you have 2nd grade at Nutter Fort, it will be Lou Ann Nicholas. 3rd grade at Nutter Fort has still not been determined. That will be out for bid later this week. Sorry. It will be Mrs. Murphy or Mrs. Elliott. I'm pretty sure.
And we have to look at,
All of the 3rd graders from Norwood could not go into one room because there's not an extra classroom to put them in. So I would have, let me give you an example. If there were 7 3rd grades, they each had 20 in them, I could put 25 and be just like most other schools. So 5 went here, 5 went here, 5 went here, like that. Does that make sense to sort of how?
And we did try to keep Norwood student.
Anyone I talked
friends
to who
or-
told me things, I wrote it down, tried to get kids together who were, you know, this one does better with this one, this one. If you told me that on the phone, I tried to make it happen.
We actually had Giovanna also gave us a list of students and where she felt they would be better placed. And so we really did look at all of those things and tried to make it the best it could be for what we have.
Now, at Simpson, if you're said third grade to be announced, they will be in a room together. I know. They had a room and I took it.
They have a room and we took it.
They had a room and I took it. If I tried to keep your students together anytime I could. When I could keep that whole third grade together, I did. When there were only 5 spots, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Well, yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I have a first grader, a fourth grader, and a ninth grader, and my daughter went to Norwood, and when she went to sixth grade, the kids always separate anyway. She went to WI. Most of her friends went to Bridgeport, and it was hard for her. When this happened to her brothers, she said, "Mom, I think in the long run they're going to be better off because they're going to meet more kids now that they'll go to WI with than to happen to them when they're in 5th or 6th grade and you're in that awkward stage of life." I mean, I think if my freshman daughter can see, you know, everybody's trying to do the best for these kids.
And they're
going to be okay.
It
She
was very
okay, and they're
difficult
gonna be okay.
when they got to 5th grade at Norwood. Kids would start talking about that in the middle of the year because they knew they were going to split. So, like you said.
Him and his team came out, I don't know exactly how many, but our maintenance guys cut out all the access panels so that they could look into the framing of the school. So I mean, you got more than one opinion into this thing? It's kind of what I've been wondering the whole time. Because like I said, I worked with some of them. We had 2. The first one wanted to rip out all the floors to look at to see if they were safe. So we worked with our architect and engineer. That's what they wanted to do. So, and I got the email to prove it. So we said, listen, if we tear it all up, we're not going to have time to put it back together. So they found a gentleman or a company that would do it. And they said, if we cut those access panels, then we'll be able to see with our equipment, you know, how safe it is. So that's why we went with them. So they worked with our maintenance director. And we didn't want to completely destroy it, thinking that it was going to be deemed safe, and then we'd have to try to put it back together. Yes. Yes. I don't know multiple. There was 2 from that company that came out. Yeah.
Okay, I don't have a question. I just basically have a comment. We have 2 over here that went to, they're from Norwood. They went to Nutter Fort for summer school. They did like it. They did have a good time. So I think us as parents, guardians, we're not giving our kids the credit to go out and make new friends. I think once they get there, they're going to be okay. It's just more of a transition for us. It's disrupting our lives. believe me, I'm not happy about it. I was sad, and I hate it for the teachers. And Miss Comer was the best. I mean, we love Miss Comer. There's no doubt about that. She did wonderful things. But we do need to step back and think about our kids and let them be kids. They're going to be okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, and what you're saying, I completely understand that. Those 3 schools were identified as schools that needed to be replaced, consolidated, whatever the plan would be. And Norwood was being looked at, but not because, not this quick. Not this quick. So, yes, we have engineers and architects that are going around to the schools that those are being affected, where they could move students safely, what additions that would need to be built. And yes, it's an active thing that the superintendent's part of her goals. Well, so we don't ever want this to happen again. You're right. This was, in the perception of it, in the poor planning of it, there's never anything that's going to eliminate making people feel that it was a hidden plan. There's nothing that we can say to prove that. It wasn't, but was it going to be replaced eventually? Absolutely. But this was just one of those things that occurred last minute in the spring that they asked us to have this school reevaluated. And, well, 10 years ago, it was deemed to be safe. And what they were worried about was that where the floor joists sit, there's little pockets, and they thought because of the bowing that perhaps they could have pulled out or slipping out of those floor pockets, those joist pockets. That wasn't the case. That's what we looked at. The problem was how far it spanned, those listen, I don't know that. Well, we have inspectors from the state that comes down on a regular basis, and there's preventative maintenance. Those are things that we have to do. The state dictates that. So it's not like the school wasn't being maintained, it wasn't being cared for, it wasn't being evaluated. We hadn't cut into the floors, we hadn't cut into the ceiling below the floors to evaluate it, because that's pretty serious, but it called for that to do it in this inspection, and that's why it had to be done. So I think that they have, some of you didn't get an opportunity to pick up I think there's a paper back here. It has students, homeroom teachers.
Right,
correct?
Right.
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, sure. You want to come up and talk to me? Because I do transportation too.
Yeah, how are you?
We have two people.
I start at 5:30 in the morning. I get up, I go to work. I'm at work at 5:30. I take a break, I go pick up kids, and I take them to their school, and then I go back to work, and then I pick them up afterwards. That's the same way I do with Maya. I've done it with Gigi. I've done it with all of them. I'm just.
Do you know? So if you if you see the two transportation gentlemen
They
out
can
there,
tell you.
they can help you with that.
I just need to know when I need to pick her up and drop her off.
Mm-hmm.
And if you check with them, I think we can get pretty
Give you
close.
the time.
Because all my kids have graduated, like they've all
went through Norwood.
Norwood, and I don't understand. Could you not put like support beams?
No.
No, was it that
No,
much?
it's that bad. You don't want your kids in the building. Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, we do have transportations out here. If they can answer some questions on the school busing, we'll get those also online so that you can see them. And they have your students' teachers' names on a piece of paper for you out there.
And we can leave up the link if you have questions. We'll try to get those answered or call. You can call Mr. Lopez. Julie Mancini is over elementary schools, and she's done a lot of the legwork on getting the students placed and the numbers. Or, call my office, and we'll do the best we can to answer the questions that you have. I'm sure any of the staff members in any of the buildings are willing to answer any questions that you have as they come up, because there's probably things that maybe even in this room we haven't thought of all the little ins and outs of every piece. There's a lot of moving parts. So just feel free to reach out or email the questions, and we'll get those answered as soon as possible. So, are we good? Absolutely. That's why we're here, right? He'll be walking in this auditorium maybe someday. Yeah. Oh. There's a set of rules for a Hope Scholarship that's in legislation. I don't know that they could just change those rules. We have quite a few. Yeah. We've had some. Yeah.
We have one more question here.
Mine's not really a question, it's more of a comment. It's not an issue of who's in charge. It's, I think, a community issue, because we all see what's happening to Clarksburg. Things are falling apart. Things need addressed. It's our job as the community to come together and voice our opinions. So we need to make sure that those questions are addressed. We need to make sure that the proper leadership, people taking hold, and need to hear from our community. So
Right.
I know that there was a fall carnival and they shut it down because we didn't have volunteers, and that's the thing that we need. We need people to be more involved.
Right.
I myself am guilty of it. My child has IEP. I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband's gone during the week, so the brunt of the chaos is put upon me. And as adults, it's difficult. But yeah, we need to work together. We need to come together, because we tell y'all what to do. So you work for us, and you're doing the best that you can. We see that. It's been
Thank you.
sheer chaos.
Anything else? I think we'll
Thank
wrap.
you all for coming.
Is there a place, if they have questions, can they continue to send those and we can maybe get them answered? Or did you have that link still up?
We get.
You want-
They all have my email address
Oh,
now. So.
David Oliverio. Yeah, so.
Feel free to call. Feel free to call me. If I don't get back to you right away, leave a message. I'll be glad to call everyone back.
Thank you all for taking time to come out.